All right, why don't we go ahead and get started? Welcome everybody to the webinar. Today we're talking about PIM and DAM and print automation. My name is Josh Van Dyke. I am the VP of Sales in North America. I've been with Censhare a little over 6 years. I'm super excited to have Ken with our partner Avire, and also Katie from BEGA, our client. So I'll let you two introduce yourself. Ken, why don't you go ahead and get started first?
Sure. Ken Zordani, VP of Sales. Been in DAM and PIM for about 10 years now, located in Phoenix, and super excited to listen to Katie and the use case there at BEGA.
And Katie.
Hi everyone, I am Katie Teman. I'm the product manager at BEGA North America, located in Denver, Colorado. And I've been working with Josh and Ken since end of 2020, early 2021 on this implementation project.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, Katie, for those people attending don't know who BEGA is, maybe you could just tell them a little bit about who is BEGA.
Definitely. So BEGA is a world-class provider of architectural outdoor lighting, control, and furniture solutions. Our international headquarters are in Menden, Germany, and our North American headquarters are in Santa Barbara, with our second US facility in Colorado, which just came online recently last year. Overall, we are primarily a manufacturer of lights or luminaires, if you want to sound fancy like us, but we've also recently expanded into the outdoor furniture market as well. We have roughly 1,700 base products with about 10 times as many SKUs per product. So those SKUs can vary anything from the paint finish color to the color of light or how they're installed, add up to 10 times as many of those 1,700 plus products. So you might not be familiar with our name just yet, but I bet you have seen plenty of our products in the wild. So to showcase a few examples of where you might see our products, here's an example of Waterloo Park in Ontario, Canada, featuring this one because it was the honorable mention in our Best of BEGA design competition this year for 2024. You'll see a handful of our bollards and step lights in this photo. And another featured product is the Grand Papago Park in Tempe, Arizona. Shout out to Arizona, which was our Best of BEGA winner in 2023. Tons of BEGA luminaires on this as well. And last but not least, a non-US base example, Neuschwanstein Castle in Germany. Fun fact, this is actually what the Beauty and the Beast castle was modeled after, and our floodlights illuminate the whole outside of this castle.
Fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about the implementation and some of the project goals that you had as you were starting this.
Yeah, so when we started this project, we defined 3 of our top goals for it. And that really came down to quality, productivity, and building for the future. So building quality into everything we do is our mission statement at BEGA, and that includes quality in our people, our partners, our products, our processes. So really selecting quality partners and a quality system and maintaining our data quality was important to us with this project. And then in terms of productivity, the way that we were doing things before was not sustainable with the resources that we had available. So a big focus here was improving productivity gains, and I'll talk a lot about the ROI that we've seen as a result of this implementation in terms of our productivity, and then building for the future. So I mentioned we recently launched a furniture line last year, and we knew that we were going to continue expanding our business. We've got big goals to continue growing going forward as well, and we really wanted to select a system that would be able to grow with us over the years.
Fantastic. And what kind of made Censhare stand out? I remember you guys talking a little bit about living in each other's worlds.
Yeah, so we realized when we were looking into PIM and DAM systems, initially we were looking at those separately. And the more that we started talking between the product and the marketing teams, we realized that the product information and the digital assets related to that product really all end up in the same place, whether that's a web page or a single specification sheet. So it really made sense for all of our data and assets related to that to also live in one place so that all of those connections could be seen and maintained.
That's huge. We hear that from a lot of organizations, and being able to kind of maximize that collaboration is really important. Now every project starts with some sort of impetus that is the catalyst to say, hey, we need a system like this. So what was it for you guys? I want to say you guys started to do an audit, correct?
We did. I started with an audit. So we heard from customers and our customer-facing team that our technical information was an issue when we had inconsistent data points across a web page to a specification sheet or an installation instruction. So we were hearing that this was a concern, but we weren't quite sure to what extent and what resources we needed to put towards this. So I started with a data audit. In our portfolio of over 1,700 products, I selected just about 200 products that were representative sampling from a variety of different product segments that really made up our entire portfolio. And the data was not exactly what we would have liked to see once I conducted this audit. But what I did was basically look at every single data point that was available to our customers across all of our product information online and our technical documents, and checked for consistency anywhere that data point was replicated. What I found was 70% of our products had at least one inconsistent data point. And notice I said inconsistent, not inaccurate. So that leads you to believe that some value, most likely greater than 70%, had at least one of those data points being inaccurate. And that could have been anything from a 1 watt difference on one document versus the other. But sometimes these would lead to bigger complaints by our customers and bigger frustrations other than just wanting to know which one was correct.
And by the way, before you did the audit, I'm sure you had some idea that there was going to be some inconsistencies. What percentage did you think it was going to be?
Definitely not as high as what I found. I was thinking more in the 30 to 40% range based on what I was hearing. I was definitely not thinking it would exceed 50%. So we were pretty shocked by this number. But I think it was kind of validating for the customer-facing teams that knew how much they were hearing about this on a regular basis.
And what type of toll did that kind of bring on the business, having that inconsistency in data and level of effort to deal with that?
Yeah, that led to so many extra points of communication that were stemming from frustration, usually not necessarily great points of contact in terms of finding the right information. There's a lot more back and forth for our customer facing teams on the sales side, on the technical side, to get to the right answer, and then work as diligently as we could to update those. But it caused a lot of extra work and back and forth for our customer facing teams, and frustration from our customers because they needed the right answer to be available right away. They didn't want to be the one checking our work for us.
I can only imagine. Well, let's talk a little bit about this. You start to recognize you need that PIM DAM combo, but how do you recognize that, and how did you know you wanted them together?
Yes. So as I mentioned, we were hearing about this, so it was on our radar. It was just we weren't sure how we were going to address the situation yet, but it was appearing as a weakness on our SWOT analysis for a few years. And at this point, everything had been done manually. We had no real form of revision control or traceability of our changes. And so I can tell you that at the start of the pandemic is when we really were hit with the need to have at least our digital assets in a accessible platform. So when we all got sent home overnight to start remote work, we realized that our marketing team did not have access to the digital assets that they needed to do their work because it all lived on hard drives in the office. So actually within the first couple weeks of the pandemic, we had people downloading and making copies onto hard drives and dropping them off on each other's front porches to share files at a distance, which we knew was obviously not sustainable. But before that, I can tell you that in my internship almost a decade ago with BEGA, after spending days or weeks applying watermarks to every single specification sheet, I knew that there had to be a better way to automate a lot of what we were doing in terms of managing our technical documentation.
Yeah, I remember you talking about 2,000 products, putting a watermark on one by one, doing that kind of laborious manual task. And it made me think, like, Katie, if there was some sort of change to a product or a spec within that product or a part, how did you keep up with that? How did you actually make those changes across all those different SKUs?
Yeah, we did our best to make the changes, but we clearly didn't keep up. And that's what our audit showed was, despite best efforts, we would move on to another project or not be able to complete something in a timely manner. And so our data was consistently getting out of sync.
And I can imagine you weren't the only one or only organization out there. There's probably attendees right now going, yeah, we have that same problem. So let's talk a little bit how you solved the problem. Let's talk a little bit about the implementation. Ken, maybe you can talk a little bit about phase one, and then later we can dive into phase two.
Sure. Yeah, as everyone was working in spreadsheets and servers from the DAM side, right? We knew this was going to be a super important phase to kind of build that strategy and foundation going into this new program, along with all the change management that has to occur, right? So through discovery, we're learning about BEGA's processes, their products, their culture, how important that little beam angle sign was to every single product as we got into some of the print automation. But here we're building their data model in phase one. We're migrating all the digital assets, sanitizing a ton of the data that had lived everywhere in spreadsheets. And the most importantly was, integrating to their ERP. They have data somewhere. We need to make sure it's not being manually populated, and we can really search and index against that inside the Censhare platform. So we eliminated a lot of the manual data processes. We had to test it, and then just really create that foundational program for BEGA to move forward with into the next phases. So, and Katie can tell us a little bit about the results and the lessons learned.
Yeah, so at the end of this phase, our marketing team was able to be remote ready. So that was a nice motivator to keep us moving in terms of data population and migration and making sure that this project continued with momentum. So we were able to move to a hybrid schedule when we returned back to the office as a result of this implementation, which was a huge benefit for the teams. And speaking of the teams, by the end of this phase, we had trained up power users across 3 different departments. And we had also populated all of the critical to quality data that we deemed necessary per product and family to get this started. And that was with big thanks to Avire for helping us ingest a lot of the data that we were able to export from our website, from the back end of our previous website. That being said, it was still about 25% of the data points that we were looking to populate. So it did take plenty of buckling down and doing the hard work to mine the data and get that all populated. From there, some of our big takeaways and lessons learned in phase one. One of the biggest takeaways was how important background research was for us. So software does not fix process issues overnight. So mapping out and defining your processes to identify the areas for improvement sets you up a lot better for success in selecting the right system. It's not just about finding the right system that's going to work for you. It's also about understanding how that system will be used or has the potential to be misused as well by your power users. So understanding the processes behind it are critical for success. Beyond that, I think having heavy involvement from the power users and the subject matter experts of the data and assets that you will store in the system is critical. So we had the people who were really living with the data, populating the data, and previously doing these pieces of the much more manual work, heavily involved in this entire implementation process to really be the subject matter experts in the room and make sure we weren't missing anything. And then the last piece, which was really the aha moment for me of phase one, was the power of being able to visualize connections within your portfolio. So the spider web of connectivity that is our portfolio in my brain, I'm finally able to show and share with other people in the organization so they can also view all of these relationships and connections. And there were certain connections that we've been able to implement here that other departments in our company didn't previously even have a way of viewing before, because those connections weren't made in our ERP system or anywhere else. So I will go ahead and walk you through a little bit of what that looks like in our
let's see what the platform looks like. I have a live video of the platform.
Yes. So starting from a family level, this then connects you to your product asset. Connected to product assets are half a dozen different types of assets as well, each with their own attributes on them. So a pre-ship item, for example, has a different set of data than an option or a driver asset would have. From there, you can see how all of these different asset types are related to each other. Some of them are one-to-many, some of them are one-to-one. And again, stepping through that family to product connectivity. And this is that spider web I was really talking about, visualizing and getting out of my brain and onto a screen for people to follow along. Within a product, you can see we've got dozens of different attributes. And there are a few fields here highlighted in gray that are pulling in from our ERP system. One of the critical pieces for us was really maintaining the source of truth. So if a price should first and foremost live in our ERP system, we want to make sure that the source of truth is where other departments in our company will need that data point to live, but we still need it visible to us in Censhare as well.
Fantastic. Well, I think there was a couple points that I want to highlight to the attendees. So first off, when you actually look at a product here, when we look at this, we're actually seeing a lot of different aspects. So this is called a compound asset. And a compound asset brings together many different assets. So here we have some aspects of media. So we have an image of the product. If we went into a media tab, over here, we'd actually see even more media, more images from different angles, whatnot. So we have some digital asset management aspects. We actually have product copy here. This is its own text asset. It's its own individual asset of text that's actually managed within Censhare as a piece of content, right? So we also have, that can be worked on separately with its own workflow. Over here, you're seeing you have, again, that product data and that product attributes coming in from the ERP. And the beautiful thing about that is you have people that can be working in parallel. So somebody could be working on touching up an image. Somebody could be working on the product data at the same time that somebody else. Somebody's working on maybe some of these reference guides that you're seeing, right? So you have all these different aspects, and somebody's even maybe working on the media. So you have many different aspects within a product that are all modular. So this, when we talk about modular content, what does that mean? It's coming together where each different aspect comes together to create something greater than the whole, but then can still be actually worked on separately. So somebody could be working on touching up the image, somebody can be working on a copy, somebody can be working on the product data, and so on and so forth. And then another point that I want to highlight here is these relationships. So, you can actually see how everything is related. Katie mentioned one-to-one, many-to-one, one-to-many, things of that nature. And I remember, Katie, we were on campus at the BEGA headquarters in Santa Barbara area, and you were showing us the system, and you pulled up a part, and then you said, oh, this part is actually part of 182 different products. And you showed that big spider web of relationships. And then you updated an aspect of that part, and then it updated automatically to everywhere else. So all the other products, 182 different products, right then, like that, bam. And I was like, oh my gosh, Katie, that is so cool, super exciting, that you have those relationships and you can see everything instantly, you can update it instantly. But let me ask you, how did you do it before Censhare? And what did you say to me?
Well, we can tell you what our processes would have said we did, but our data audit would show that we didn't. do those updates effectively over time. We simply couldn't maintain getting to all of those data points.
Yeah. And Ken, maybe you can just talk a little bit about the ingest of data or product information from an ERP a bit.
Yeah, as you see here, you're seeing marketing copy, a lot of the product details, but then as Katie mentioned, the highlighted areas are being fed in from the ERP, and that's where Censhare is a unique position that we can feed in all this master data. It's not editable, but it's searched and indexed, and the users can use it as they need, should they have access to it. But it really brings that 360-degree view for every single user that's got access to Censhare. That is so impactful versus being in spreadsheets or servers for them to be able to go to market.
Yeah, and so powerful for users, as you mentioned, Katie. There's people that need access and visibility to it, but they don't need the permission to change it, right? So
Exactly.
That's one of the powers of pulling that information in from the ERP into your PIM DAM. All right, so we've talked a little bit about phase one, about the kind of the discovery, the ERP connection, the build, the system launch. Let's talk a little bit about phase two. Ken, maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the phase two goals, and then Katie, the results and lessons learned, and we'll dive into another video.
Yeah, we've built a foundation in phase one, right? It's the data model, clean data, digital assets in there, and people are starting to really use the system. Phase two was what many at Scott at BEGA would say is the automagic things that are going to happen, which is the website connection. When they're creating these specification sheets for their products, when they make a small change in the InDesign template, it's PDF and immediately sent to the website. So every customer or channel has the update, most accurate information for any project they're bidding on, which really drives customer experience and those rave reviews that BEGA really lives and depends on. So, Katie, what are the results and kind of lessons learned from phase two from your perspective?
Yeah, so this is where we were really able to realize a lot of the ROI that we were hoping for with this implementation, with the automation really in place that was feeding both the website and creating and updating on our website live the specification sheets that we use as well. So with this, we were able to introduce that new business segment of furniture very quickly without having to manually create all of those web pages and copy paste dozens of new product specification sheets as well. So our time to market there in order to get that segment launched, we were under a time crunch, as most people are when it comes down to launching a new product. And this really helped save us days and weeks worth of manual work that would have been done previously. With that, we estimate that from this phase, we're looking at a savings of over 1,500 hours per year saved within our sales and marketing team, based on automating the website connection as well as how those spec sheets are created. That doesn't even account for the work that didn't consistently happen before in terms of updating every single one of those data points, or even the additional work caused by our customer-facing teams working through issues that were caused by inconsistent data points. So this is where we really realized a lot of the big results. And our biggest lessons learned from this, I would say I had two big ones from this one. One was to make sure you're protecting your brand identity at all costs, but don't be afraid to challenge the status quo. So I cannot tell you how many conversations we had about a B in front of the product number. And that was one piece where the answer was because that's the way we've always done it. So being able to challenge why we did it that way and make sure that it wasn't going to hurt our brand, but if it is slightly different, but it still gets the point across and it pulls your brand, don't be afraid to challenge that status quo. But we had been told by so many customers, just please don't break it, when we were asking for feedback about how we could improve these things. So we knew we had room to grow, but we needed to make sure that we weren't overcomplicating things or necessarily reinventing the wheel from the customer's perspective. But on the back end, it was completely different. And then the other piece, speaking of the back end of everything, one of the biggest realizations here was that we essentially built a house of our beautifully designed website and then lifted it up and poured the foundation after the fact, with Censhare being the source of truth for that information. So if I could do it over, I would probably have done those two in the reverse order. That being said, I did learn a lot of lessons from creating the website that helped in preparation for the Censhare implementation. But it did feel a little bit out of order and backwards in terms of how we approached that.
I hear you. And, you want to get that data in place and the right system in place because it's going to feed the website, right? One thing, Katie, you mentioned there, not just saving the automation on the hours for, the print production piece, which we'll show in a second, but you had mentioned launching a new furniture line. That wasn't just launching a new line of products, it was also an acquisition. And so I can only imagine having the right tool in place made it easier during that acquisition process to get all that information in place.
Definitely. It was a great way to know what information we needed very clearly from our new partners and make sure that we had a place to put all of that data that we were gathering.
Well, let's dive in. Let's talk about one of the product information sheets or the product data sheets.
So what you will see here is our template on the right-hand side of the screen for our luminaires, and I'm assigning a single product to this template. And you'll see that automatically all of that data and images have now just pulled in and are linked back to that product asset. So when we make a change on the product asset, it'll make a change here. We are still able to tweak pieces if we need to in here, like adjust the sizing of an image, but this creates that link so we can edit the data simply in the web client or whichever client we're working in and have it automatically update on this. So this is what I was talking about previously, taking somebody 45 minutes to an hour to go find all of this data, copy and paste it, format it a certain way, and now it's done in seconds. And I will mention that all of the data points you see on here aren't just coming from the product. We actually have them coming from about a half a dozen different asset types that are related to that product asset to pull in all of that data as well. And then there's a lot of very specific formatting happening behind the scenes here as well. For example, the table in the lower left-hand side is automatically adjusting the size depending on what data is present or not, and sections are appearing or not depending on what data is available. So there's a lot of formatting wizardry happening behind this as well to automate it and have it look ready to go without any finishing touches required.
Yeah, I love that. And, you can see where someone would take 45 minutes to an hour, as you said, to do this before, and copying and pasting and manual errors in the process of all of that. And instead, now this takes, 5 seconds, right? So a lot of hours saved. And yes, it takes a little bit of time to get that set up on the back end. But once it's there, now you're not just creating those data sheets automatically, but in the system, they live in the system, they're related to the product, they can easily be published out of the site. And most importantly, when there's an update to the product, it can automatically update to the data sheet, again, keeping your data accurate and consistent, which was a huge goal for BEGA. Let's talk a little bit about some of the business impacts and what's on the horizon.
So coming back to this 1,500 hours a year that we estimate we are saving within our sales and marketing department, I really think that that is an underestimate of how much we're really realizing from this, because that doesn't account for, again, the time in addressing those inconsistencies with customers, or even a lot of the editing for maintaining products after the initial creation. So I'd say that's a relatively conservative estimate. Beyond that, I would say that our customer experience with our technical information has overall improved. Whether it's right or wrong, it's right or wrong everywhere. And if we ever need to edit a data point, we edit it in one place, and then it's live and corrected everywhere it needs to be corrected. And this has really allowed us, again, faster time to market for a new business segment, but even for our primary product line, it has really improved our time to market and productivity from our marketing team to get those new products launched. Looking forward, we are looking to create even more automation and use workflows to optimize our processes even further. And beyond that, we want to continue increasing how we use this information. And we want to share more data with our website to build out some really exciting new advanced search features on our website. That's all going to be powered with the information that lives in Censhare as its source of truth. And beyond that, looking forward into who knows what's next, maybe AI, optimizing SEO pieces, and lots more process optimization in the future.
I love it. I love it.
Fantastic.
Well, one of the cool things that we did as a group, Ken and Katie and I worked on these top tips. So kind of looking at PIM and DAM together as a platform, came up with 15 questions, really help you narrow down your search, help you select a platform that's right for your organization. And these are questions that you can ask for your own team for internal readiness, but also questions you can ask vendors to make sure that they really have capability on both PIM and DAM, not just one and a little of the other. So feel free to scan this QR code. It'll bring you directly to a spot where you can download these 14 tips, and it should be really, really valuable for you and your team. On that note, I'd like to actually go ahead and thank Katie and also Ken. Ken, thank you so much for joining and the
Sure.
time. Katie, as a customer, we always thank you as a customer, but also thank you for the additional time today, presenting the use case and walking through the product itself. So thank you so much.
Of course.
And on that note, we are on time, and I will conclude this webinar. So I want to thank the attendees as well for joining, and we look forward to connecting with you in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Perfect.